pattern for replacing groups of 2x3 with four by four buildings. So let's say you have a bunch of feta that you're trying to replace with Colossus. If you just start storing the feta, you end up with a lot of empty space in between each cycle until you get to the third repetition. And the reason for that is 4 by 4 is 16 times 3 equals 48. And then 6, the squares of a feta, times 8. So 1, 2, 3, 4 repetitions is 48. So eventually you'll end up with the same amount of squares. But on the third repetition, where you have 32 squares of 4 by 4, you'll end up with 8 empty squares worth of feta. So that would look like this. We're going to need to store, oops, let's do it this way, sorry. We'd have to store 4 of our 2x3s in order to fit the 4 by 4. And now we have 8 wasted squares. We've got to store 2 more in order to plant the second one with 4 empty squares, and then on the last repetition we'll be able to break even on spaces. So here's a better way to do that. The key is to use a group of 3 2x2s inside of this 2x3 group in order to do this. So the first repetition, we're going to store 3 of our 2x3s. 1, 2, 3. And move the 2x2 into those pockets, right? And there's a 2x3 that would fit in there. The purpose of using the 2x2 is that each repetition of this, we gain 2 squares on the first, 2 additional squares on the last. So you actually break even with fewer wasted squares during the process. On the second repetition, we just store 3 more, so we're up to 6 total that we've stored. Drop our 4 by 4 in here. We now have a 2 by 2 gap, which is fine. We're going to leave that until the third repetition. Now we just store 2 more 2 by 3s. So remember, that's the 6 total. We're going to move this out of the way for now. That's still planted, but we're just going to move it out of the way for now. We're going to reset our 2 by 2 stuff below the 4 by 4s that we've just added. Replant the one that we've had, and then add the third one that we're trying to add. So throughout the process, the maximum amount of wasted space that you have is the 4 empty squares, the 2 by 2 on the second repetition. You can do it horizontally too. I've always done it vertically, but you can do it horizontally through the whole process. Let me get these reset up. So we're going to start off with the same general pattern. We're going to store 1, 2 to get the height that we need there. And then the third one is actually horizontal in this repetition. So we have 2 empty squares now, same thing that we end up with in the first pattern. Next repetition, we're going to store 1, 2, 3 again. Same scenario that we end up with if you do it vertically, it's the same pattern there. We now have 4 empty squares, same thing that we end up with in the first variation. And we store our last 2. Oops. oops, sorry, this would actually go here. And then end up with our row of 3 2x2s to plant the third 4x4. Does that make sense? So it's just a better use of space as you're making those changes. If you are able to do 3 repetitions all at the same time, perfect. But if you're doing these every couple of days or whatever, it just minimizes the wasted space in between those changes. All right, hope it helped. Talk to you guys later.